Just 1 second, folks. Always takes just a second to get this live stream going. And then I will quickly shut it off so it doesn't feed back. Apologize for, that's just a little bit of the inside baseball that you might get there. Okay, turn that off, and I'm going to go back to my presentation. So, good morning again. Thanks for the opportunity to present on pre-trip inspections. Originally, I had talked with the representative from the Highway Patrol about doing this, and they were willing, but we had some really difficult scheduling issues on getting them back in to do it. And we'd already put it on the calendar, so we went ahead to do this presentation. I put it on as a safety moment, and as I plugged along putting the presentation together, I thought, this is probably not a safety moment topic. It probably takes a little more time than that. So we're gonna hit the major highlights here, but I'm not gonna get into the minutia and the real fine details on this. If you're a CDL operator, you should have been through that in the past, but this is kind of a reminder of why we do it and a few of the things on how to do it. But I probably won't get into the very nooks and crannies on this. Here's the outline for today's training, and I will try really hard to keep this to time. But we're going to talk about what is a commercial motor vehicle, because there are different classes of those. We'll talk about the types of inspections that are required and what that process is, and the documentation that goes along with doing this pre-trip inspection. All right, so we'll start off with commercial motor vehicles. You are probably here because you have a CDL or you have commercial motor vehicles in your organization that you operate. We have to realize that there are a wide variety of different commercial motor vehicles utilized by members of the trust. And that was another challenge, a challenge going into this, is it's a pretty broad area. And so your inspections are going to be specific to the types of vehicles that you operate and the CDL that you have, your operator's license. So we'll run through these, but just an overview of this is the majority of you out there probably have dump trucks, 10-wheelers, snow plows, whatever you want to call these. They're a heavy straight truck that we utilize for pushing snow, hauling gravel, that kind of thing. However, there may be some of you on this call who have a bus like the one that's in this slide. You may have other commercial vehicles. Some of you, a limited number, will have a Class A, a tractor trailer that you see going up and down the freeway, the semi trucks that are out there. Some of you are carrying people. Some of you may be operating school buses. A wide variety of different vehicles. So let's just understand quickly what a commercial motor vehicle is. It's over 10,001 pounds, and that's the vehicle itself, or the combination of the power unit and a trailer that it's hauling. It's designed, or it could be designed to transport more than 8 passengers for compensation. Some of you, very few of you would be in the compensation world, but those of you that are transporting people, if it is designed to transport more than 15 people without compensation, you're in as a commercial motor vehicle anyway. So one of these airport shuttle buses like this, if it's 15 plus or it's over 15 passengers, you're in as a commercial motor vehicle. Or if it's used in transportation of hazardous materials. And so that can really be a wide variety of vehicles. Whereas, you think of a cylinder of gas chlorine gas, it's required to placard any quantity. So I could take just a small cylinder of that, and it could make a lot of vehicles a commercial motor vehicle if I'm transporting hazardous materials. Let's look at our vehicle classes and our CDL classes. When you go take a CDL test, you're going to get one of three different classes, and then there would be some endorsements that could go along with those things. Class A, that's kind of the highest level, with the exception of if you're adding some endorsements to that. That's a combination vehicle greater than 26,001 pounds. It's a tractor trailer. It's what we normally think of when we think of a semi-truck. In Utah, you can get a CDL license from 18 to 21 years old if you're staying intrastate. If you go interstate, if you cross state lines, then you have to be 21 to operate that. But in Utah, we allow 18 to 21-year-olds to have that. Class B is what the majority of you probably are operating. These are dump trucks, heavy straight vehicles greater than 26,001 pounds, or towing another vehicle less than 10,000 pounds. Okay. And then Class C, these are single vehicles less than 26,001 pounds or towing less than 10,001 pounds, but only if they're designed to transport 16 or more people, or they're placarded to carry hazmat. You need to be 21 or older to operate, to have a CDL for this class of vehicle. Okay, we need to understand which type of vehicle that we're operating, because there will be separate requirements for our pre-trip inspection for each class and each type of vehicle within that class. So why do we do vehicle inspections? Well, number one, of course, is for safety. Safety first. It is to ensure that your vehicle is safe to operate out there. And why is there a separate threshold for commercial motor vehicles? Is it just because they're commercial? Well, that's part of the reason, but the big reason is they're big and they're heavy. And if something goes wrong, and they have other systems, they have air brakes that may not exist on a regular passenger vehicle or light truck. If something goes wrong with a commercial motor vehicle, it has the potential to cause a catastrophe. And we've seen a few of these in recent years where trucks have gone out of control in one way or another. And so that's why we do this. We do pre-trip inspections because of a compliance obligation. There are federal requirements, state requirements to perform these inspections. And from the trust standpoint, this reasonable and prudent line is really essential. If something goes wrong with our vehicle, we want to be able to prove that we've done the reasonable and prudent thing. Let's say we lose brakes on our vehicle and we crash into somebody, blow through an intersection. Boy, that's a nightmare for everybody involved there. But after that incident happens, and we're looking at trying to defend you against claims, one of the things that we need to be able to do from the trust is be able to show that you have been reasonable and prudent. And so if you have documentation and a track record showing that you have done your pre-trip inspections and fix problems whenever there's a defect in the vehicle, that's going to make it a lot easier to defend you. But if you don't have that, it's going to be a lot harder to defend because there's just no track record. We haven't shown that we've done anything to fix problems or address issues when we find those. There are a couple of different types of vehicle inspections that we look at: annual or periodic testing that it talks about in the regulations, and frequent. And those would be your pre-trip, post-trip type inspections. All right, so our annual inspections. The standard says that every commercial motor vehicle must be inspected every 12 months by a qualified inspector who has training or certification to inspect and maintain commercial motor vehicles. Okay, this is the state, quote unquote, state inspection. This is the very detailed inspection that happens, and it's documented. You should have documentation in your vehicle. Depending on the type of vehicle, you may have a decal or a sticker that has the little beehive on it on your vehicle, indicating that you have had your annual inspection. The frequent inspection, these inspections are done by the driver. the operator of that vehicle has the responsibility to make sure the vehicle is safe before they operate it. And so in the standard, it says a driver must be satisfied that all CMV, commercial motor vehicle equipment, is in safe operating condition before operating. In addition, drivers must complete a report that identifies the vehicle and list any defect or deficiency discovered by or reported to the driver, which would affect the safe operation of the vehicle or result in its mechanical breakdown. All right, so here's the requirement. As an operator, as a driver, I have to do an inspection of that vehicle, a DVI, driver vehicle inspection, prior to operating that vehicle. And we ask, is it pre-trip, is it post-trip? And the answer is really, yeah, it involves both of those things, because I don't sign that that everything's okay until I've completed that form at the end of my shift. I started at the first of the shift, but I completed at the end. All right, driver vehicle inspection report. So is there a standardized form for this? No, you can make your own form. You can buy a form. My recommendation is, if you can find a form specific to the type of vehicle that you have, that you can get from a company where you've got a multi-part form. I like that. I'm kind of old school when it comes to pre-trips. I like a two-part carbon form where I can have one in the truck, and I can have one for the carrier, for the manager that you take in. And I'm not specifying one company over another, but there's J.J. Keller and other companies that are out there that provide these forms, and they cost a little bit of money, but they're handy to have. Others use an electronic form to do this, and that's absolutely fine. You can create that if specific to the types of vehicles that you have, and that can make these pre-trips a little more efficient. If I can go along on my phone or my iPad and check these things off as I go, that's pretty handy. So when do I have to complete a report? Boy, and just a little sideline on this. I'm a guy that spent a lot of my career reading standards and codes and regulations and trying to understand exactly what legal requirements are out there for various different things, whether it's OSHA or EPA or all of those things. And I've got to tell you, the DOT's got to be one of the worst as far as trying to find consistent information, and it kind of goes back and forth in a lot of different ways. So just on this subject, when do I have to legally complete a driver vehicle inspection report? If you're carrying property, you need to complete that report when deficiencies that affect safety are noted. If you're carrying passengers, you need to do it every time, every day, every shift, or pre-trip inspections for that. Now, that's the minimum level. What is our recommendation as the trust? I would be recording these reports every day, every time you use that vehicle. Why would that be? Well, I don't want to just record when I've got a deficiency. I want to show when I don't have, that I'm doing these on a regular basis. I want to show that I've been reasonable and prudent. Okay. All right. Next one. So what to check? Now this is a terrible slide because I've got a big long list, but this is the list that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration gives us that we must check. And so there's a whole list here. But once again, this is the minimum level. There are a lot of things that I may check on this vehicle. It doesn't talk about DEF in this list, but it's probably something that I want to have on my list because I want my motor to function properly. And if I don't have enough DEF in my reservoir, it's probably not going to function properly for very long. So here's the whole list, but we'll go through a little bit of we'll go through those as we go through the presentation. All right, so we want to prepare to do our check. Remember, safety first on this. You're going to be grabbing a hold of parts and components and twisting and pulling and to make sure things are there. You're going to be checking fluids, various things. So you want to have a good pair of gloves to do this. I would wear a safety vest as well. You're out in a yard and you're walking around this. There may be other vehicles walking around. This is probably a requirement that you have already, but if not, make sure that you've got that reflective vest and you stay visible there. Have some additional tools available. You want to have a rag so you can, so as you check your fluids, you can wipe off the dipstick and all of those things. You want to have a hammer to whack some tires and you know, to be able to test various things there as you walk around. Okay. Oh, and just as on that safety first, make sure your vehicle, or make sure the area is safe when you do the walk around. If it's not safe, if you're out parked on the side of the freeway, that's not the place to be doing your pre-trip inspection. You need a place that is safe for you to walk around and stand back and take a look. If you're trying to see that all the lights are functioning, you may have to step back away from the vehicle enough to see. One of the things that we look at is we look at all the components on a truck or other vehicle, is it present? Has it fallen off? Is it secure? Is it undamaged? Is it functional? We look at those categories there, and we should be able to go through. You know, as you're taking your CDL, it's good practice to go out and actually verbally say these things. The alternator is present, it's tight, there's no apparent damage to this, to the alternator. You know, simple things like that, and do that for each component as you go along. You'll sound a little silly out there, but it's a great way to practice, and it helps you to identify the different components of your vehicle as well. So as you perform this, use a routine, do it the same way every time. Like I said, these forms will really help. If I've got a checklist that I can go down, it can help me to maintain that routine and do it right. It's specific to your vehicle type. If you are driving a bus, it will have some checks for your passengers, you know, to make sure all the seats are secure, make sure that the emergency exits are in place. You will check things that somebody driving a dump truck won't check, and vice versa. The person driving the dump truck is going to check chains and tailgate. Check to make sure that there are no rocks where they're not supposed to be. You know, that there's no rocks up on the top side of the dump bed, or there's no rocks in the duals on the dump truck. Those are things that will be different for the dump truck operator than it will be for the person driving the bus or other type of vehicle. Pre-trips take time. Most sources out there say that you need to spend about 30 minutes doing your pre-trip inspection. That's a pretty significant amount of time, but you're a commercial motor vehicle operator, and this is serious business. If you're a professional driver, this is part of your day, and you should plan that in. Now, if I'm pulling a trailer, I need to inspect it as well. What if I change trailers during the day? Well, I need to do an inspection on that trailer as well. And can I document that on the same form? Yeah, you can. What if I get a different power unit? So I jump in a different dump truck. Do I have to do a pre-trip on that one? Yes, and it's a separate report for that one. Okay. As I look at my vehicle, I want to make sure that I'm checking both sides, even for the same items. So maybe I tip the hood open and I'm looking at the belts and hoses and those types of things. That belt goes all the way around, and I can see it's on both sides. But as I check the driver's side and the passenger side of that vehicle, I want to check the belt just the same on both sides, because the defect may be on one side and not on the other. This is a hands-on inspection. It's visual as well, but as I do this inspection, I want to grab that belt and I want to pull it and make sure. If I should not be able to pull it more than about 3/4 of an inch out of alignment there. So it has proper tension. I'm going to be whacking tires and maybe testing with the pressure gauge, but grab a hold of things and pull those and move them and make sure that they're not loose. So as you do this inspection, physically touch those components and test them to make sure they work. You want to have your lights on so you can check those and verify that those are all working as we walk around the vehicle. So we generally start under the hood. Oh, one thing I forgot on my startup is make sure your handbrake's set. Make sure that you have your brakes set, because you're going to be crawling around this vehicle. You're going to have the hood open and all of those things. So make sure it's safe. In some cases, you may want to use chocks under the wheels, depending on the location of the vehicle. All right. So we open the hood. When that's part of a pre-trip inspection, we're going to check our fluids, oils, power steering fluid, automatic transmission fluid if it's an automatic transmission, coolant, washer fluid, all of those things. I want to look for leaks. Look on the ground, look on the sides of the motor and the engine block and various places to see if there are leaks. While I've got the hood tipped open, it depends on the type of vehicle, of course, I can look at steering components and in many cases I can see the front brakes and tires from that same location. Those front steering tires are extremely important because if we lose one of those, that can really put us in a bad situation. All right. Make sure the filler caps and the dipsticks are back into place and they're tight. Check the hoses and belts for defects. I don't want to see any cracks or anything like that. Like I said, twist the belts and you pull on them. Make sure they're tight. Look at the fan. Look at that. We don't have chips, pieces out of the fan. Look at the electrical system. Make sure there aren't wires that are out of place or they're exposed. Look at the exhaust system and make sure we're not seeing leaks. Have a turbocharger on this engine. Ensure that I can't see leaks from that as well. All right, we're gonna wrap around the vehicle. 4 minutes. All right, we're gonna do all right. We're gonna speed through some of the specifics on here. I want to stand back and look at the entire vehicle and look for damage. Why do I look for damage? Well, I might be sharing a vehicle with somebody else. I want to identify that damage in my pre-trip inspection and not at the end of the day, because I might be blamed for the damage that's happened. If there's been some damage, we're probably going to look closer. Sometimes our vehicles get damaged in storage. They're sitting in the parking lot and somebody backs into the vehicle and causes some issues there. Well, that could cause a fuel system leak. It could cause, you name it. Lots of different issues can happen. We want to look at our tires. Doug will get excited about talking about tires. He likes tires. But we need to know, and tires on a commercial motor vehicle are a different animal than a passenger vehicle. We're talking a lot higher pressures. Many of these are running 120 PSI. We have some, these are significant if we have issues with tires. So our specific, and whereas on a passenger vehicle, our tread depth is the same for all 4 tires. In a commercial motor vehicle, those steering tires need to have at least 4 30-seconds of an inch on the drivers. The others need to have 2 30-seconds. But I'm here to tell you, don't be driving around with 2 30-seconds on a commercial motor vehicle. We need to have decent tires on those vehicles. So these are minimum levels. We need to, I would be looking at least 5 or 6 30-seconds, and I would be replacing those vehicles anytime we're getting down to those lower ends of that. Look at your rims and make sure there's no defects. I got a thumbs up from Doug, the tire man, so I feel good about that. Look at defects. Look at your lug nuts. Look if you can see some rust dribbling, coming down off of there. That might tell you that things are loose. Do I take a lug wrench around with me when I'm doing this? Sometimes. You might have indicators on there to show the position of those lug nuts. But just look at that. How do I check the tire pressure? For a long time, there are guys, they'd go out with a hammer or a club and they whack the tires. And if it bounces back good, that's good. What's better? Better is to test it with a gauge. And you may want to look at that. How often you're doing that? Well, I've been running this truck every day for a few weeks, and you're feeling confident in where it's been. You might whack the tires as you do that, as you do your pre-trip. But my truck's been sitting for a while. I'm going to get out my pressure gauge. I'm going to check every one of those to make sure those are all right. If I'm pulling trailers, I want to look at my air lines, make sure those glad hands and all of that have not been damaged, that there's no leaks in the hose, they haven't been pinched. Our wiring where we connect our electrical to the trailer, inspect that for any damage as well. Look at the coupling system. So if you're driving a tractor trailer, you've got a fifth wheel there that you have to look at, and there's some very specific stuff around that. You've got landing gear on the trailer. But if I'm pulling another type of trailer, the coupling system is just as important. Inspect for those safety chains and all of the other things that go with that, safety clips and pins and everything that goes along with that coupling system. I want to look at our suspension system. And I got the suspension. I remember I was going to talk a little bit about steering. As we're looking at that front end of the vehicle inside of the cab, a lot of that steering system is visible from inside of there. So look and make sure everything's in place. You got a tie rod in there that has one of those castle nuts, has the little cuts in it, and there should be a cotter pin holding that in place. That's a pretty simple check, but verify that is there. And when we get into the cab, we're going to be testing how much play there is in the steering wheel. We shouldn't be able to go beyond 10 degrees in play. So that much rotation on the wheel. There can be a little bit, but shouldn't go beyond 10 degrees. All right. On our suspension, we should look at every one of our leaf springs. We should, if we have air suspension in there, we should look at the bags and make sure that they're properly inflated and not damaged. If you've got broken leaf springs, that's something that you need to take to the mechanic and get that one fixed. All right. Check our brake pads. Our adjustment indicators. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into those brakes, and you should know every one of those components and look at those. Depending on the type of the vehicle, the amount of brake lining that you see can be different, and so look at that specific to your vehicle. All right. So when we get in, then we'll get into our vehicle. And we want to start it up. We're going to check our gauges and verify that they are all working, that our pressures and our temperatures are where they should be, particularly in vehicles that have air brake systems. We need to ensure that our compressor system is working adequately so we can check our overall brake system. We want to then walk around our vehicle again and check that all of our lights are functioning, that they're visible, that they haven't been blocked. What can block a light? Well, there's all kinds of things, but dirt and grime can block one of your lights. Those reflectors on the side of the vehicle as well, the DOT reflector tape is also required, and so if it gets damaged, that should be replaced as well. You should know the parts of your system and how they should appear and what they should look like. And there are lots of great diagrams. The state CDL manual has some good guidelines as well, and I will send you a few other piece of information as well after we get done with the presentation. Inside the cab, we need to make sure that we've got our emergency gear, some triangles or flares. A fire extinguisher needs to be charged and accessible. Horn, wipers, your washer, all of those things are things that we check inside. We should also be looking for our documents. You should have a document packet inside of there that has your proof of insurance, your registration, these forms, and all of those things as well. And then we want to do our air brake bleed down test. And like I said, we don't have the time to go through all of this. This was probably one of the hardest things that people did on their CDL, was to remember how to do this. And so a lot of people may not be doing that as often as they should. It's a pretty simple test, but there's some great YouTube videos out there that can walk you through doing that if you've forgotten how to do it. But like I said, we don't have time for that. What if I find a defect? Well, number one, we want to get it fixed. The whole purpose of doing these inspections is to identify deficiencies and get those fixed. So here's from the standard. It says, no motor carrier or intermodal equipment provider shall require or permit any person to operate, nor shall any person operate any motor vehicle or intermodal equipment declared and marked out of service until all repairs required by the out of service notice have been satisfactorily completed. Okay, so we go through there, and if we find defects in the brake system, the steering system, there's actually a big list. It's the Appendix G of the standard. If I find a defect in that is something that I'm going to red tag. If I've got a tire if I've got damage to a tire where I'm showing steel belts, or I've got some issue like that, I take that vehicle out of service and get it repaired. So what form do we use? Like I said, you can use your own form, but you want to make sure that we have all the DOT required items, but be specific to your vehicle. And also, we should be doing moving checks as well. Pay attention to what's going on in your vehicle. Look at your instruments, look at your pressures and temperatures and all of those things. But more than that, pay attention to what it sounds like, what it smells like, what it feels like. Back in the day, my dad would never let me operate a piece of equipment with a radio. I always wanted to have a radio out there. and he said, no way. You got to be able to hear what's going on with your equipment. So that's just something to think about as you're out there. What is it supposed to sound like? What is it supposed to feel like? And if something isn't right, get out and check it. All right, documentation. So as an operator, as a driver, you have the responsibility to do your vehicle inspection, prepare the report when it's necessary, and turn that into the carrier, your employer. The carrier needs to ensure that all of the deficiencies that are identified on these reports are taken care of, and they're required to retain that for at least 3 months. Like I said, I like to have that little booklet of forms in there, and then I've got my pre-trips for the last few months at least, if not a year, within the vehicle. So then I can show that, hey, not only did I do it right today, but I do it right every day, and I've been doing it for a long time. Okay, I've gone a little bit long. Just take a look at various resources out there. I found that a few trucking companies, Schneider is one that has done a really good job with their pre-trip inspection video. There's a YouTube video where they walk through each individual piece of equipment for a tractor trailer. That may not be the type of truck that you're looking at, but take a look at those, because then you can get the nitty-gritty detail on there that we just don't have time to cover in this presentation today. All right. So in summary, know your vehicle, know the parts, know what things are called, know what they do, what the different parts do. Do your inspections. Do that every day. This is a pre-trip inspection that you should be doing each time before you operate that vehicle. Document those inspections. Document, document, document. If you have a deficiency, take action on it. Your employer has an obligation, as well as you as the operator, to take care of those problems when they're identified. Practice these things. Do the air brake test and all of that stuff that you know is challenging. Keep those skills up to date. Identify the parts as you go along doing the pre-trip. And then if you ever get pulled into a port and have to talk about things, that's going to make that experience much better that way. Hopefully that we identify all the issues here and we don't ever have problems out there on the road because we've done a good job. All right. I went longer than I intended to, but I knew that was going to happen with this subject. Are there any questions that you have out there, folks? You can go ahead and type those into the chat box. If you have a specific question for me. Do we see any of those coming in, Brent? I don't see the chat.
I don't see any questions. No chat, no questions yet.
Good, because then I'd have to answer if there were.
I think you did a good job, Jason. Great covering that.
All right, thank you, Brent. Doug, anything to add?
No, that was great, Jason. Thank you. This is really important to make sure that we're doing this and documenting it. You can't emphasize that enough. When something bad happens, these things are going to be questioned and checked, and we need to make sure we've done it and we've done it properly to protect ourselves and our organizations and others on the road. It's really important. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that. We'll make that the final word today, folks. Thanks for your attendance today. Please go out and have a safe day. And if you ever have questions or you want to discuss something with us, give us a call, send us an email. That's what we're here for. Be safe out there.